Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Empowering Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm Glenn Harper.
Julie Smith.
What's going on, Julie? You look a little tired today.
I'm very tired. We had a big event yesterday, and I'm not used to talking so much.
There's nothing better than talking, especially when people listen, which is half the fun.
Well, I don't know if that's the case, but
Oh,
yeah.
goodness. Well, we've got a great guest today. We've got Kerim Kfuri, and he is the co-host of the Supply and Demand Show on YouTube, president and founder of the Global Crosswalk, a SaaS solutions platform for the supply chain industry, and president of the Atlas Network. Dream seems to have a panache for figuring out the fastest, most efficient way to get goods from point A to their final destination. With a background in finance, marketing, and international business, working with big companies in a consulting role as well as dealing with complex regulations in NASD and FINRA, Dream's journey is long and complex. He is the authority in the room wherever the term logistics, supply chain conversation comes up and is emphasized by being mentioned in many publications. We will find out a bit from this guy if he ever turns off this passion for logistics and engages in other passions. Hey, Kerim, how are you today?
Good. Thank you so much. What an intro. I need to take you on the road with me and have you be my hype man. That was great.
I watched too much Price is Right as a kid. I don't know. Maybe that's it.
No, I really do appreciate you all having me here on the show. And as you said, I have a podcast called the Supply and Demand Show. So I'm in your seat oftentimes interviewing guests as well, and I do appreciate the chat. So
Awesome. Well, we try to get a little bit to know our guests. This is, we mostly rely on entrepreneurs to listen to this so they can understand what that journey's like. And we just like to find the story from our guests. And for you, I guess the first question is, you're a vault. I can't find anything about you. I don't know where you're born. I don't know where you're raised. I think you live in New York right now. But
yes.
elaborate, where were you born at?
So I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. That's
Okay.
where I'm from. My parents are both Lebanese and came over in the 70s. There's unfortunately been a lot of conflict in that part of the world for thousands of years, not just the last, however many years. And even now, we're hearing about a lot of the craziness that is in that part of the world. But, they came over. My father is a physician and was an OBGYN for many, many years and delivered thousands and thousands of babies. And I grew up in the Baltimore area. I went to school there, lived there, and went off to college in St. Louis, Missouri. I went to Washington University in St. Louis. Go Bears. And I studied, international business and marketing while I was there at the Olin School of Business and graduated from there and started a .com when I was young, right out of school in the early 2000s, actually late 90s, early 2000s, when many other people were doing that. And that went for, a year or two until everything blew up and the .com bubble burst, as we all may have seen or experienced. And went back to school and became a .com refugee, as many people did. That's what we were called then, and got my master's degree in business law and finance and started focusing more on corporate governance and regulation. And that's where my career sort of took a different turn. I worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission in the Office of International Affairs. I was then at NASD FINRA and was really on the regulatory side of the financial industry. Fast forward to, a trip or two to Asia and my passion for entrepreneurship and business in general, I said, there's a major gaping hole. And somehow in my mind, between the education and experiences in international business and these regulatory experiences and what I saw in Asia, where ideas become reality, especially on the manufacturing side, I said, you know what? There's a big gaping hole right here where people, businesses, small, medium, and large, want to make things in this global economy. And there's not enough visibility. There's not enough transparency. There isn't really enough regulations. And so there's no recourse. And there's just nightmare stories when it comes to doing business cross border. And that was the beginnings of me starting my business, the Atlas Network, more than 20 years ago. And everything that's come thereafter. So I sort of fell into the supply chain industry through a myriad of different experiences, both, cultural, being, well-traveled, speaking many languages, and, different business experiences. And then, as I said, some of these consulting and regulatory pieces that just came together for me naturally. And I love what I do, and I try to help as many businesses as I can avoid expensive mistakes.
So, when you were growing up in Maryland, did you guys speak, what was the home language? You speak Lebanese or American, or you?
I I grew up speaking French first. So
Jeez.
in Lebanon, they speak French, Arabic, and English. It's got like
Okay.
98% literacy rate. I think it's one of the highest in the whole Middle East.
Hmm.
So I spoke French and then Arabic and then English. And so, I think my parents, when they came over in the 70s, didn't know if they were going to go back or not. They kind of came here and they were working and figuring things out. And what was, the beginnings of a civil war turned into 15 years until they could even go back to go see their families. So by that time, we were living here and it was, life had to move forward. You had kids, they had to get an education and off to the races we were. But for the first, couple of years, it was, French and Arabic and not so much English. And that's why I started school about a year late because, I didn't know what they were talking about in the
Can you
classroom.
imagine?
Um,
Imagine.
so yeah, but I speak those languages and then through time picked up a few others like Spanish and a little Chinese and some Japanese and some other things that I just sort of tend to pick up when I do
Uh,
different things.
What do you mean
s-
just pick
Pick
up?
up.
Like you had a trip and you went someplace and
Well, the
now you
Spanish
speak the language?
the Spanish started because I was going to Spanish speaking countries and I said I really need to know Spanish. And because of the fact that Spanish is a Romance language, it's very connected to, obviously Italian and to French and so on and so forth. I was able to pick that one up pretty easy. And then, obviously traveling to Asia and doing so much work. I mean, I have 3 offices in China. I have my teams over there and everything else. You pick up, certain words. I'm not going to say all of them are good words. There may be some bad words in there,
Once
but
it means something.
you pick up words that are important when you need to use them. And so that's just more fun things rather than just real linguistic education.
I think
Uh,
that's one of the craziest things is, most Americans, like, I can't even speak English well, let alone other languages. But it seems like most people that are immigrants that come in, they're multilingual, like whatever that is, and it's easy for them. Did you find it was easier? Or is it just something like I just really want to learn it? Because again, when you can start getting more than 3 languages, you just usually have a skill set there.
I think that when people come from other countries, they feel as though it's a necessity to basically adapt. And in doing so, picking up the language is one of the key things to do that. I feel the same way when you travel to other countries. We as Americans, we have this idea that, hey, everybody else should just speak English. But the reality of it is that there's a misconception on kind of the cultural exchange when you believe that or think that that should be the case. If you meet in the middle, that's where the culture is really, where everybody has a good information exchange and you really grow and learn as a person, in my opinion. And I'll tell you a perfect example with Spanish, back to we were just talking about Spanish. I remember going to Spain the first time and I spoke no Spanish and what my experience was like. And then I had gone to Spain, let's call it a year later, after I had picked up more and became a little bit more fluent and conversational. Night and day experience. Doors open up for you. People want to experience, they want to know about what you're doing, who you are, and this, that, and the other. So there's this balancing act where language really connects us, regardless of culture. And when you try to make those efforts, those go forward efforts, I think people really appreciate that. So, that's my belief about that.
I feel that's talking to a lot of people that, you just got to at least try to speak the language and people will help you out. And maybe not the French, they're kind of funny that way, but everybody else, if you at least try, they're like, okay, he's giving an effort, we'll work with them. Did
Yeah, I
you?
mean, or in the worst case scenario, it's just like a funny joke. It's like, oh yeah,
Right.
you're trying, you're so cute, but
Get out of here.
you
Well, so when you were growing up, like, so you were born here, correct? In
yes,
Baltimore. Okay, so growing
yes.
up, did your mom work too, or just your dad?
Yeah, so it's one of those again, those kind of immigrant type of stories where business becomes a family business. So my mom was a health tech back in Lebanon, so she would draw blood and she was used to working with patients and things of that nature. So as my father did more and more with his practice and opened up some private practices for his OBGYN practice, my mom helped run those offices with him and, help work with the staff and make sure things were going well and so forth, which made it interesting because we ended up being raised, me and my sister, by, kind of a village. And the village was, two grandmothers, cousins that were around and some uncles and this, that, and the other, because my dad, as an OBGYN, basically would sleep at the hospital. If a
Hmm.
lady is going to go into labor at 3 in the morning, that's where you got to be there. And so I didn't unfortunately see him as much as I would like to growing up because, he was always working. But that also rubbed off, I think, from a work ethic standpoint onto me and why I understand this idea of working in the day and in the night because I saw that growing up as a kid. And my mom was right there by his side, helping in all the ways she could too. So yeah, they became a good team.
As a child, did you get to work at the office? Like, were you, did you kind of get integrated into that family business, or did you ever do anything entrepreneurial growing up that, would have been a foreshadow for what was to come?
Yes. So, I mean, never working in that business because of the sensitivity of obviously women and very private issues.
Well, I didn't know if you got to like, clean the office
File.
afterwards or like,
Right, right.
do the
No,
shredding or whatever.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I definitely made it around to the office now and again. And originally I was thinking that I would maybe go towards medicine because that's what I knew. And my grandfather was also a doctor. So I was thinking that those were directions that I was going to kind of go in. So I had some immersive experiences where I'd go to the hospital to see my dad, or he would let me kind of walk some of the floors and have those experiences. But my real entrepreneurial side started early, very early, probably 6, 7 years old. We had a blueberry bush that would produce just like bushels of blueberries, and I never forget, just grabbing them and going to the side of the street like kids have like a lemonade stand, and it was kind of like blueberries for sale, right? And then I remember then later on being into, in the early 90s and things getting into different kinds of clothings and you start looking more at what's cool and what you're interested in. And I remember buying 100 shirts and having them pressed with my own logo and design to try to sell them in the mall. And this was again these beginnings of commerce, and we're building a product here and we're making it and we're selling it, and trying to understand supply and demand and customer needs. So yeah, I mean, it started with some of those kinds of fun experiences. My first big entrepreneurial venture was definitely the .com I created in the late 90s, early 2000s, which was called MrProducer.com. The idea of that was a business to business for the music industry. I've always been a music person. And so I was working for Warner Brothers Records as like an internship, and I saw all the fragmentation in that industry. And so I decided to create a platform to try to help with communication between artists and venues and people who are trying to buy and sell, musical equipment and music industry professionals. And there's many different entities, almost similar in many ways to the supply chain, how there are many different entities that need to talk to each other. And so that was my first kind of really big entrepreneurial venture. I graduated early to actually start that .com. And we all wanted to take over the world at that time, and some of us did, and some
Glory
of us
days.
definitely didn't.
Glory days. You know what's
Yeah.
funny? You're definitely on the side of this and the bell curve of just one of those entrepreneurs that just started young, but your capacity to get things done and learn things is way on the other side of the spectrum. Like languages, running businesses, and just insatiable appetite to do all these things. And it wasn't focused on just like, I'm going to go do a job. It
Yeah.
was like, I got all this other stuff I can do, which is kind of cool. And that is something that, again, this would definitely be something genetic. Some people are just born with it and some people kind of learn it. I don't want to say you had an advantage because it sounds like you were just born with it, but you're definitely a smart guy that can put all this stuff together and recognize that superpower early.
We're the product of our experiences, absolutely. I believe so. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a genetic thing. I think that you really have to have different levels of exposures, different people in your life that come along and sort of say, hey, there's a mountaintop up there and you can climb to the top of that if you really want to. So I'm a big fan of mentorship. I had an uncle of mine who was like that. He was a person who really just believed that if you dreamed you could build this castle in the sky, it was just a matter of finding, some bricks and some mortar and start building, and you'll be there. It'll manifest itself from ideas into those realities. So I had that from a young age with some good people around me. And yeah, there is some background to it. I mean, the reality of it is that the Lebanese people are the Phoenicians, right? The ancient traders of the old world created the alphabet, right? Phonetics comes from the word Phoenicians. And so, there is some of that there going on. But that only goes so far. You really got to just, as an entrepreneur, you got to wrap both arms around it and go.
So
So,
you're
well,
go
so
ahead.
you were in college doing an internship at the Warner Brothers,
Yes,
and you decide to graduate early to start your .com.
correct.
Correct?
But before that, remember, he triple majored. Okay, we tripled majored in finance, marketing, and international business, and he decides to graduate early.
I'm tired.
I'm telling you, it's a lot. That's
Yeah, we
impressive.
started this one that you said you were tired, and I was like, how far are we going to go with this story? But yeah,
Just
I
milking it.
mean, yes, there's a lot of dynamics here. There's a lot of, just, I don't know.
You
I guess
just have this internal thing. I think this is sometimes hard for other people to understand. Do you just wake up in the morning and you've got to get everything out of every day? Like there's just this internal burning inside of you of just motivation, determination, or does it come from something else?
I think that's exactly what it comes from. I think that all of us are here for a finite period of time, right? We don't know how long it is. And there are some of us that their main ambition in life is to like leave a mark, to do something that is lasting even beyond who we all are. And I think that that's sort of my wiring over here. I wake up with sort of a bigger goal and intention to really make an impact. And that could be an impact not just, on others or on business. It could be just in your own family, or it could be with your own health or whatever it may be. But that I think is what is the driving force for me, to be impactful with the things that I do or choose to do in business or in life or in pursuits or whatever it may be. And that's, I think, the foundation of how I'm wired. Other people have a different pursuit, to just appreciate every moment and take their time. Others want to have a more simplistic type of way of living and existence that's based upon different balancing points and structures. There's nothing wrong or not a right about it. Each one of us lives the life that we're gonna live and how we're wanting to live that makes us fulfilled and happy. For me, it is about making impacts wherever I can.
When did you decide or realize that you were going to move with purpose and intent and direction? Like, was that something that
I
was
think you
starting?
said 6 or 7.
Well, I think that was just, but I mean, selling some stuff. But I mean, like, you're like, I'm going to take everything and put it in the day. What, like, was it really that young?
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
it was that young. It was. And it was again, it was with the same thing. I remember a perfect example in playing sports. I played a lot of sports as a kid, basketball, tennis, any kind of sport you could really think of. And I do remember that, I was really good at tennis and I loved basketball, but I wasn't good at basketball. So what did I end up doing? I ended up basically playing in the rain, in the snow, whatever moment I could to just play and play and play and play and play until I could really, really improve, because my focus and goal, as you said, goal focused, was to make the teams in school, like to make those teams, which were really difficult, had a lot of great athletes, and it was a challenge to get in, especially coming from, not a really good background in this sport. And I just worked and worked and worked, and I made it on all the teams. And that was just, again, it was like there was a focus, there was a goal. I put it all into it, and I made it, that dream, a reality.
I'm gonna ask a really random question, but I promise there's an end to it. But it
Okay.
popped in my head as you're describing this. Do you feel like growing up and maybe even now that you're kind of a loner?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, because of the fact, it doesn't mean that I don't have support around me. I've got.
Yeah, I don't mean that
Yeah, no,
necessarily.
of course, but and that's important too, because you have to have the support of your family and your friends and other people to have some levels of a benchmark. But yes, when you are a true entrepreneur and a leader, an entrepreneurial leader, right? There's a lot of entrepreneurs, but an entrepreneurial leader, you're on your own island. You are on your own island. You basically have to wake up every day and be the cheerleader for yourself more than anyone else will be. And you are definitely the one who has to just, roll up your sleeves and say, let's get to it. Or, hey, you need to take a break right now because if the machine's broken, you can't help anything else or anyone else or do anything else. So there's this push and pull and sort of self-regulation that you have to do as well. But yeah, it's a very good question.
Well, I feel like you wake up and you're a little tunnel vision, right? Like you know what you want to get out of your day. And so I think I would find that it would be tough to possibly have others that maybe don't have that same focus in your day to day because you've got to keep going. Like I envision you on this mountain and like you've got to go straight up to the top and those people are loners,
You're
right?
so far ahead of everybody that they just can't even keep up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they don't even know where you're going because you're just going ahead and you don't give a F what anybody thinks, right? I mean, you know what you want to do and you're just going to do it, which is
I do I do care what other people think, but I don't always take their advice.
you know what you want, I guess.
Yes.
You go do it, and it's not their dream; it's your dream. It's
But I
not.
think you have enough EQ to know whose opinion or whatever the fact you say you care about what other people think, to know what matters and what doesn't. I think you probably have a really great filter for noise. And you probably had that really early on to be able to have that kind of focus.
Yes, but at the same time, too, this is where I believe sometimes your inspiration or your knowledge comes from those areas that you least expect. So if you live in a scenario with blinders on to say, I can filter out the noise, as you sort of called it, then you may miss some of the most integral points or some really key information or a unique philosophy that you would have never even thought to look at or examine.
Do you have
So,
a real life example of that?
I mean, it's just anything. Let me give you a perfect. I mean, it's not. I won't give you a real life example because I can't think of one off the bat. But I'll just paint one for you. Okay, if I go to the supermarket and I am, buying something, from, someone who's at the cash register, let's say, and we end up engaging in a random conversation about whatever it may be, my attention and focus turns to that person. I don't know that person. I don't value, devalue, or look at it in any other way other than the fact that it's a human interaction. And that in that human interaction, there's going to be something of value that's going to come about, even if it's a good morning, a good morning. And you say to yourself, wow, these are two human beings that are recognizing each other and basically like talking as like, as members of society. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I think there are others that filter that stuff out, those commonplace interactions and those kinds of dynamics with others because they may not find them valuable or they say, hey, it's not in my purview of what I'm trying to do today. But I try to tend to find all of those things that they have value.
So I think what you're probably trying to say is what most entrepreneurs have to learn to do, and is that it is you have to be comfortable being in the uncomfortable, which is total chaos all the time. And you have to be aware of all these things happening, but you're going to filter out what's good, what's bad, what's good is bad. But you don't like, I don't think you meant like shut it down, but just
No.
knowing how to filter the things that will help you. But sometimes, and this happens to me all the time, you it's a random thing, and you find out that that connection was probably one of the most best ones you've ever had in your life, that you wouldn't
Yep.
think you'd have to go talk to this person or see this, and next thing you know, it's something incredible that you didn't even realize, right? You
And it's
didn't
always those.
always though.
It's always the unplanned that
Correct.
ends up working out the way that it had to work out.
The
And you look
randomness of it.
back and you're like, wow, if I hadn't stepped in this thing or I didn't drop that piece of paper, if I wasn't 5 minutes late or this, all these little tiny dynamics, then this thing wouldn't have happened and that thing wouldn't have this, that, and the other. So, we plan as much as we can, but we have to be open to whatever sort of is manifesting in our direction.
Love it. So how did you pick Washington University? Like, how'd you say, well, I want to go there? Was it scholarship? Was it sports? Was it just that's a far away from home?
Yeah, so basically it was, be honest with you, the best school I got into. I absolutely could not get into that school today. I think the last time I looked at it, it's a 4.0 and a 1600 GPA, and then you still don't even get in or something like that. So it was really, really hard then, and it was even harder now. And I've got a son who's going to be 16 years old, going to start looking at these college applications in a couple of years. And I don't envy these kids now. It's harder than ever to get into universities these days. But yeah, I went there. I loved it. It was just far enough to be, away. It was called the Yale of the Midwest. They held the World's Fair in the 1900s. A lot of very famous writers and business people and mavericks came out of it. Anheuser-Busch is based there, St. Louis, Missouri. They were pretty lenient with the enjoyment of your college experience, let's call it, which was fun. And it was a really great place. St. Louis was kind of like a sister city to Baltimore, like where I grew up. So I was like, hey, so they're like Philadelphia, St. Louis, and Baltimore, are like the same city in like just like different places. At least I sort of find that to be the case. So I really enjoyed it down there. The curriculum was very, very difficult. I went down there originally to do medicine, like I said, because the Washington University was the third in the country with regards to kind of undergraduate medical direction
So at
down
this point, you still were going for med school, right?
originally.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
originally. So I went down there thinking I was going to do that. And then when I took chemistry and the average was a 30 in the class, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. And then the reality was is I love the science, but I didn't really think that I wanted to, not that I don't care about people, but I didn't think that I wanted to be in that service of, medical human care. I loved science, but not so much that aspect. So my mind started to change about what I really was doing there and what I really wanted to do. Because to be a doctor and be a good one, you have to really that's got to be your main focus, which is the patients and the
So
patient
what semester did you switch and still triple major?
after the
So I can
first.
keep drinking more coffee.
After the first. Okay.
After the first, I basically said, I'm just like,
That
this is
just hit you.
yeah, it just hit me. And I had a couple of little fun ones along the way too in college. I think all of us try the unique classes. I think the best one for me was archaeology because I loved Indiana Jones. And
Great movie.
I was like, why not? I could do this. This would be great. And it was the hardest class I ever took in college. I actually had to withdraw from it. I had to take a withdrawal from it because I failed the first test. And the second test, I was just on the pathway to failing. So I went and I spoke with this professor, and she was wonderful. She was a preeminent archaeologist in the industry and so on. I said, I really thought it was going to be this. Then she's like, you thought it was going to be Indiana Jones? I said, yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Where's all the adventure? I don't, and the romance.
Hey, what are we?
You'd be digging at rocks. Yeah.
Well,
Dusting little
I
rocks.
took acting for the non-major, and I had to like literally sway the person to give me an A because I thought, oh, I'm great at public speaking. How could this be terrible? Well, I'm not good at faking anything. So I
Yeah.
understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, it was really hard to just kind of do that. And, the professor said, listen, you're just going to take a withdrawal. It won't impact your GPA. It just means that you paid for classes that you get no grades for.
Easy
So
peasy.
I was like, all right, as long as we're not having a real train wreck here. So yeah, I had that was interesting, but it was a great experience. I did sports, as I said, towards the tail end of my junior and senior year in high school because I played basketball and I could jump out of the gym. They were like, look, we want you to basically do high jump, triple jump, long jump, and hurdles. And I was pretty fast. So I said, all right, let me give it a shot. And I ended up being really, really good at high jump and the field events. And that helped me. There was no scholarships or anything like that in the application process as well to get to the university. So I went down there and I, was going to do sports and looked around and said, they're not giving me any money. And,
Not doing that.
this is St. Louis and I'm already here. And, am I really going to do this? And,
Were you a Fosbury Flop kind of guy, or did you try to do it the
no,
same way?
yeah, Fosbury flop for
All
sure.
right.
You go full.
Well, make it happen. Well, it's funny. And again, we get to see some really unique individuals that on their journey, what they do, and for somebody that's entrepreneurial, motivated and trying to create and do things, all of a sudden you switch and say, "Well, I'm going to go work for the agencies that, from a private company standpoint, the great Satan, like you're at FINRA, like you're squeezing me. I can't do anything because you're putting all these regulations on me." How did you switch from being a creator to an enforcer of regulation? Is
Well,
this,
I want to know what happened to the .com era.
oh, well, I mean,
And
that's
then that'll lead us into that.
all
So
right.
Yeah, sure. So basically, in short, trying to catch a tiger by the tail would be the way to explain that. What I mean is spent a year and a half to build this beautiful platform. And in that year and a half, the entire industry changed from a revenue model standpoint, right? Where everybody was trying to make money on online advertising. And in the end, the model shifted towards just bring a bunch of a big population and you can maybe do some subscription-based models and do different kinds of economic metrics to essentially monetize in this space. And the goal of all of these, dot-com entrepreneurs at the time was we'll build it, they'll come, it'll get big, we'll do an IPO, although we have no money that we've made whatsoever, and everybody will cash out and we'll make $5 gazillion. Well, by the time our platform was done and ready, that whole market had just dried up. And businesses were going out of business and there really was nowhere to kind of go with it. So in the end, you had all these great people with great ideas and great technologies, but no business models. And that was kind of the case for me and thousands and thousands and thousands of others. So, again, when that happened, that was the moments where I had to kind of shift my direction and think about what I really needed to focus in on, which was building up more of my financial acumen and business experiences. And I got a master's degree from American University in business law and finance, and then did the whole pathway of, SEC and the regulatory side and so forth, which was amazing experiences to work in those organizations, but at the same time was not feeding my entrepreneurial fire in any way. So, after a while, I just had to recognize that. And my wife actually, said, "Hey, listen, you're getting miserable here. You probably want to go off and do what you really want to do. So you just might as well go and do it." And that was what I needed. I needed that backup, that support, back to your original point that you had before.
my curiosity, where did you meet your wife?
Not a straightforward story either. Not a straightforward
Of course
story.
not.
I'm
Not
seeing
a
a
straightforward.
seeing a pattern here.
She was checking out the grocery store. It's obvious what he said hello.
No, I was traveling. I was traveling with my parents and my sister on a trip in Spain, and it was at the time. I think they still have these kinds of tour groups like ABC Tours or Apple Tours, where you go to these countries and you have, let's say, 8 days. you take a bus all around the place. You fly in, they give you all these hotel accommodations, and you just have a really great experience where you see a country in a period of time. So there was this group that was called ABC Tours at the time in the 90s. And my parents and my sister and I went to Spain and Portugal, and my wife was with her family on the same trip, and we met. We met on this trip, and we basically hit it off, and we're in different cities for the first kind of 3 to 4 years of our relationship, and just stuck it out and continued to see each other, and then we went from there. We just kind of grew our relationship from there. So yeah, met in a different country.
That's
And
crazy.
what does she do?
My wife is a New Yorker, and her background is in human resources, and she's worked for a lot of large scale law firms and financial institutions, really hiring and doing a lot of HR related, talent related business and functions. So
Just
she's
was curious if you guys, intertwined
no,
because
no,
she's
there's
from here.
no, there's a big yin and a yang there, and that's
Oh,
good. I think that's an important thing. We're very different in those ways, but on the important things, we're in the same place. So that's good.
so you're doing all these things, and then all of a sudden, this 2x4 hits you in the forehead, and you go, "Wait a minute, we got to get some kind of format or technology that can match up buyers and sellers, manufacturers, shippers." And again, can you give like a less than a minute answer of logistics? It is a big term. What does it mean in your world? What is the base definition of logistics for the average listener? Because they would have no clue, probably.
Sure. So I'm going to give you two terms. I'm going to say supply chain management, of which logistics is a part of that, right? So my big work, my big business that I do is supply chain management, which is assisting customers and businesses to build supply chains, which is supplier selection, prototyping, manufacturing, quality control, logistics, meaning shipping and transport, getting it from kind of point A to point B, delivery, warehousing, reordering. That whole entire life cycle that I just said. That is what we help businesses do that do not have the resources to do so. They don't have the knowledge to do so, the wherewithal, whatever you want to say. Or we also even help companies that do have those capabilities, but have disruptions in their actual supply chain where they need better suppliers, better quality control, better sourcing and procurement and logistics and everything else. Because breakdowns happen, manufacturing capabilities shift. And this industry, more than anything else, is riddled with ups and downs. I mean, that's literally why I wrote the book, which I think you all know, which is Supply Chain Ups and Downs. That's my book. Is all about the chapter one is get ready for a bumpy ride because it's just completely wrought with things that you can control with best practices, dotting I's, crossing D's, measuring twice, cutting once, all this kind of, foundational support. But there are so many unknown variables that impact everything that we as consumers, when you don't see goods on the shelves anymore, or prices skyrocket, or students that are now studying this, or business professionals that are hearing the word supply chain being thrown around, need to know. Something happens in the political environment, supply chain can be impacted. There's a war somewhere, there's a natural resource squeeze, there's natural disasters, there's all kinds of things that basically impact the global consumer economy. And this is the area that I write a lot about and I talk a lot about because I've been a practitioner of this for several decades now. And that's really where a lot of the thought leadership is coming from around the world of supply chain.
Yeah.
So I'm the person over here who has to close the loop, right? Like it's all got to make sense to me. So explain to me, you're working at FINRA
Yep.
and your wife says, you know what? I can just tell you're not happy. You got to go do your thing.
Yep.
How do you get to this?
So basically, you have to run parallel tracks when you're an entrepreneur. I am not a big fan of let's just cut this thing off and go to this thing. So with that in mind, in the last kind of years I was in the corporate world, I started building this idea and building the methodology and
But
started
how did you
talking.
come up with this idea? Like, and again, this is me just trying to like logically, rationally think through this. Like, all the things that you'd done before, all those don't equal what gave you that idea? What was your aha moment? What happened? What triggered you? What relationship made you go this route?
Right. So basically, it was a combination of all of those things that had come before, which was those educational experiences, my experiences at FINRA and at the SEC, which was all about risk mitigation and all about kind of control matrices. So, and my previous experiences in technology, creating my .com, which was a communications-based platform looking to communicate between entities that don't know how to talk to each other appropriately, going all the way back to just my global mindset as far as language and travel and who I am. And this all came together in a sort of combination in my mind to say, this is an industry in global supply chain sourcing procurement that is broken. It's missing all of these regulatory best practices and mechanisms to really be able to be as successful as it can be. And who's having the problems and suffering because of that? Consumers do, small to mid-sized businesses that have two pennies to rub together. They make some really bad decisions and then they're just out of business entirely. And that's what entrepreneurs look for, right? They look for the problems and then they try to create the solutions accordingly. And that was the beginnings of how I created my company and the technologies we've developed and the best practices and all of the things that I've been doing for a good time now. So it all was disjointed until it wasn't. It all kind of came together in this, in this kind of combination to be something unique and interesting. And that's what I hope that people can get out of, I guess, our conversation here is that you may have very divergent interests or goals. And in the end, they all could compile to end up being a synthesized path for you. You just don't see it or know it at the time. And that's why you just have to be open to all different kinds of experiences and choices that you make because you don't know how those puzzle pieces come together in the end to paint you a really beautiful picture. And that's sort of how it came together for me.
It's like you're working, doing your thing, and you heard this soft knocking on this other door. And you're like, I wonder what's in there. And they're like, here we are, global
Yeah,
entrepreneur
exactly.
that you are now. So, as we try to figure this thing out as entrepreneurs, again, the journey is the fun part, right? And how you get there and where you get and where you're at the top of your game. You're doing the thing. You got businesses all over the world. And here we are. And then Julie's going to ask her coveted question of,
Which one? Now you're putting me on the spot.
yes,
What is your superpower?
Communication, that would be it. I think that I know how to speak to people. I know how to resonate with different people. I understand the concept of know your audience. When I'm with certain people, I can speak in a particular way. When I'm in other places, I can speak in a different way. And I believe that that's the thread that connects us all, really, the ability to communicate effectively and with purpose when it matters and with sensitivity in other cases. And so I think communication is my superpower, the ability to communicate.
I would agree with that.
It's a good answer.
What's
Are
it?
you looking for my
Yes,
my
I'm looking for the final
my
one.
last and final question for you? It's the hardest. That's why we wait till the very end
It's a
so you
doozy.
so you
Yeah.
don't hit like leave meeting.
Yes,
What is your end game?
end game. We talked about it before, and it is pretty vague. What it is to basically make an impact. And I'm making an impact in particular ways today. I don't know if it will be the same ways in the future, but my end game is to always make an impact with the things that I am doing and that I care about. To not really be the one that's sitting on the sidelines, but to be the one who's kind of pushing the boulder up the hill towards an end. And that could be in the end to improve my golf score. I don't know what it's going to be, or I don't think it's going to be that. I know that it won't be that for sure. But I do believe that it's about, making an impact with everything that I do.
You answered it perfectly because we already knew the answer. There is no end game for you. You have way too much determination, motivation, experience, and all those things that you will continue to do what you just described. It just depends in what arena.
Yes, correct. 100% true. And hopefully I continue to find arenas that excite me and interest me, because when I don't have that, then it's done.
That's it. And there it is it took so long to get here. Now you know most of the secrets, if not all, and you're constantly learning. Why would you stop now? It makes no sense. What are you going to do at home? Just sit around and play golf? It'd be terrible. I mean, I
Oh,
love golf, but you can't do that. So I'm still making an impact, which is what it's all about. Well, tell you, we just can't appreciate you enough having you on the show. Lots of good nuggets on this one, and we can't wait to put this out there. If you want to give a couple plugs to a couple of your companies and where people can find you, that'd be awesome.
sure, I appreciate it. My main global supply chain solutions company is theatlasnetwork.com. For the thought leadership, philosophy and leadership, it would be at my personal website, which is kerimkfuri.com. And then if anybody's interested in my latest book that I just put out, it is supply chain ups and downs.com. And those are really the big ones. Other than that, I'm on LinkedIn and all the other kind of social stuff. So
We will make sure to get it all in the show notes too, so our listeners can get there quickly and easily.
Kareem, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Wish you the best, and don't work too hard. I'm just kidding. Keep doing. You're having too much fun. It's not even really work, to be honest. When you enjoy it, correct?
yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Great questions. Really we dug in deep on this
All
one.
right, I love it.
But I really did. I really appreciated the time. Thank you all.
I appreciate it. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.